I found myself trapped in a dark prison, the weight of despair pressing down on my chest like a suffocating shroud. I was a prisoner of the Spanish Inquisition, condemned to die, but the exact nature of my punishment was a blur, lost in the fog of my suffering. I had been cast into this lightless cell in Toledo, and now, as I struggled to awaken from the depths of unconsciousness, I was engulfed by fear and confusion. What had brought me to this fate? I couldn't remember the trial, only the suffocating darkness that surrounded me and the echoes of my own panic. I alternated between brief moments of wakefulness and long stretches of disorienting sleep, where every physical sensation became a tormenting reminder of my fragile existence. As I came to, disoriented and trembling, I realized I was in a prison devoid of light. The darkness loomed around me, an ominous force that seemed to whisper dreadful secrets. With a heart pounding in terror, I felt an overwhelming urge to understand my surroundings. Though I was weak, I struggled to my feet and began to trace the perimeter of my cell. My hands grazed the cold, rough stone walls, and I counted my steps, desperate to measure the dimensions of my prison with nothing but a tattered piece of my robe to guide me. The air was heavy with a dampness that clung to my skin, and the chill sent shivers down my spine. But then came the realization that sent chills of a different kind coursing through me. I was not alone. I had barely gathered my wits when I stumbled, tripping on my own robe, and was thrust back from the brink of a horror I could not yet fathom. I felt the ground beneath me give way, and in that instant I sensed the presence of a gaping abyss, a foul pit that threatened to swallow me whole. I understood then the cruel intention of my captors. This pit was a trap, a means to deliver me to unspeakable horrors, the kind whispered about in fearful tones among the condemned. As the water and bread were tossed into my cell, I realized that my every move was being observed by jailers who seemed to revel in their sadistic power. My stomach twisted at the sight of the food, but a more insidious dread gnawed at me. The drink was poisoned. The darkness swept over me again as I fell into a deep, unnatural sleep, the kind that leaves you unmoored from reality. When I awoke, it was to a blinding light that pierced through the darkness of my mind. My heart raced as I realized I was bound to a wooden plank, the violent illumination revealing the truth of my surroundings. The cell was far smaller than I had imagined, the walls adorned with iron plates covered in grotesque graffiti, twisted depictions of hell, the very place where rebels like me paid the price for defiance against the Inquisition. Above me I noticed a dreadful image, a figure of time wielding a pendulum, short yet ominously menacing. I stared in horror as I watched its slow, rhythmic motion, an oscillation that hinted at a dreadful fate. The cord lengthened, the pendulum descended, and I felt the chilling realization settle within me. It was a sickle, poised to sever my very soul. My punishment was to await this inevitable death, tortured by an unquenchable thirst, worsened by the spicy food they had carelessly left behind, and stalked by ravenous rats that scuttled in the shadows. Only one of my arms was free, and my captors had permitted this so that I might eat, if only to prolong my suffering. But I realized in a moment of desperate clarity that I could use this to my advantage. I began to spread the food across the cord binding me, luring the rats closer. They would gnaw at the ropes, their insatiable hunger becoming my salvation. As the pendulum swung ever closer, its cold blade a harbinger of doom, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Just before the blade could strike me, I willed the rats to chew through my bindings, and they responded to the call of food. In a frantic burst of motion, I tore free from my restraints, escaping the sickle's deadly kiss by a breath. Yet, even in my moment of triumph, the true horror of my situation became painfully apparent. The iron walls of my cell began to heat up the air, growing stifling and oppressive. Panic surged within me as I realized I was being crushed toward the center of the room, the walls closing in around me like a vice. The Inquisition had resolved to force me into the pit at the center of the cell, a fate worse than death. The pit loomed before me, a gaping maw of darkness that offered a false promise of relief from the oppressive heat. But even as I stood at the brink, the horrors within the pit became clear in the flickering light. My heart raced with terror as I caught sight of the unimaginable horrors that lay below, and in a moment of pure desperation I felt myself plummet into the abyss. As I fell, I heard the echo of voices and the distant sound of trumpets. In that fleeting moment of despair, I felt a hand grasp me, a strong hand that pulled me back from the brink of oblivion. It was General Lassalle. The French had entered Toledo, and the Inquisition's grip on the city had been shattered. I was freed from the clutches of darkness, saved from the horrors that had sought to claim my life. If you liked our video, please like, subscribe, and leave us a comment telling us what your favorite horror book is.